Good evening and welcome to the Cabarrus County Board of Education's Monday, April the 12th, 2021 work session and public hearing for the 2021-2022 budget. I will call the meeting to order, and we would ask that the viewing audience join us in a moment of silence in memory of Michael Landers, who passed away unexpectedly on March 30th. Michael was a teacher at Cabarrus Virtual Academy this year and had worked as a teacher, coach, and club advisor at Mount Pleasant High School for the last 17 years. Please join us. Thank you. And now, board members, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will say welcome to our viewing audience and thank you for joining us tonight. And now, board members, we will move on to 4.01, and I would ask that we have a motion to adopt the agenda as approved.
So moved.
I have a motion, and may I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Blackwell and a second by Mr. Furr. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now we will move on to the public hearing for the Cabarrus County Schools budget for fiscal year 2021-22. I would ask that we have a motion to open the public hearing on the Cabarrus County Schools budget for the fiscal year 2021 and 22.
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Blackwell. May I have a second?
Second.
Was that Ms. Adcock? Okay. Motion by Ms. Blackwell, second by Ms. Adcock. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. I will declare the public hearing open. Persons wishing to address the Cabarrus County Board of Education on the Cabarrus County Schools budget for the fiscal year 2021-2022 may register to speak with the executive clerk via email at corina.neville@cabarrus.k12.nc.us. no less later than 5:30 p.m. on Monday, April the 12th, 2021. Speakers must include their name, group name if applicable, address, and phone number. Speakers will need to remain in their vehicles. A member of our staff will call the phone number provided once it is their turn to enter the building. Speakers must wear a mask, will be temperature screened before entering the building, and will need to complete a COVID-19 screening. No one is permitted to enter the building with any speaker, and speakers will need to exit the building immediately following their comments. Each individual speaker may address the board for 3 minutes, and individuals speaking on behalf of a group may speak for 5 minutes. Groups must select one speaker to represent them. And at this point in time, I would ask if there are any speakers that have requests to be heard. Ms. Neville? Thank you. So we have a hearing that we have no speakers that have requested to speak. I would ask that the public hearing be closed for the Cabarrus County Schools budget for fiscal year 2021-2022. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We are now back in open session. I will move to 6.01, committee reports. Are there any board members that have any committee reports tonight? I don't think any of you had anything for tonight, correct? Okay, great. Hearing none, I will move to 6.02, and I will turn it over to Interim Superintendent, Mr. Brian Schultz, for the COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Just like to give a brief update on our COVID-19 indicators that we have here in North Carolina as well as in Cabarrus County. So Larry, go ahead and go to the second slide, please. Just next 3 slides really deal with the state of North Carolina. You'll see this first slide shows the number of cases, a little bit of a slight uptick in this past week. You'll see this was as of Thursday at 2,087 cases with an average over the last 14 days of 1,534. Go ahead, Larry. Thank you. The percent positive, you can see that kind of up and down, looks almost like a roller coaster over the last month to 2 months. The last day that was taken last week was reported on Tuesday across the state at 5.1%. And then the next slide shows the hospitalizations for the state of North Carolina. You see a decrease with a little bit of a slight uptick here recently at 1,004 as of April 7th. And then when we look locally at the next slide, we'll see the number of active cases as well as the total number of cases here in Cabarrus County. I would note that, the active cases did drop from the prior week. And I would say also that the number of new cases that we've had last week was slightly down from the mid 360s to the mid 340s. It was 345 last week and 364 the week prior to that. If we take a look also locally at the age groups, next slide, you can see just a slight increase the last couple of weeks. Last week just up about 1 in each of those age groups, the 5 to 17, 0 to 4, and 18-year-old age groups, but flattened off the last 2 weeks, but a little bit of an uptick there over the last 2 weeks ago, I guess. And the next slide shows our percent positive. So as of last Wednesday, we were at 6.4%. So it's a little bit of an uptick over the last 3 weeks, but holding at 6.4 as of last Wednesday. And we'll get the next update on that 2 days from now, this coming Wednesday. Looking at the hospitalizations on the next slide, we'll see that we're, as of last Thursday, we were at 41 hospitalized at Northeast, and 23 of those being Cabarrus County residents. And then also an update on the vaccinations in Cabarrus County. If you kind of look to the right there and see the arrows in what's on the left is what the Cabarrus Health Alliance has done on their own. And when you look to the table on the right, that's the Cabarrus Health Alliance along with all of the other providers that are providing vaccines. So you can see a total of over 87,000 vaccines have been administered in Cabarrus County. 30% of Cabarrus County residents have received their first dose, and then 20% have been fully vaccinated. So you'll see about 1/5 of our population here in the county have been vaccinated. And if we look at the just the table of indicators that we follow to make sure that we're looking at the spread in our community, you can see the first 7 indicators we're at a moderate spread, and those are creeping up slightly. You can kind of see where the threshold is for each one of those and how close we are to that threshold. In some cases, we're kind of right in the middle. Some cases are a little bit more towards the yellow side of things. So we'll continue to monitor that, but right now we're in a moderate spread category there in that middle category. And then next slide, please. The last 3 categories is the transmission within the school buildings. We did not have any schools that had clusters over the last 2 weeks. And then we did not have it. We did have to move Irvin Elementary to remote for the 3 days prior to break. But thankfully, all the students, there's been over 14 days now, which is the incubation cycle, and obviously the quarantine cycle period of time for the students that were impacted prior to break for that. So they'll be ready to go on Plan A starting tomorrow. And then lastly, that metric 10, the staffing. If you'll go ahead and look at the next slide, Larry, you can take a look at the staffing and the number of quarantines that we have, and just slide that down slightly if you don't mind. We're at a pretty low level as of last Monday. We didn't report out this week just because it wouldn't be a good reflection because we just didn't have staff or students in school. So we look at last Monday, we had 52 staff that were either quarantined or positive, and then 243 students who were quarantined or positive. And I say on the bright note, that does include Irvin. We know we had over 100 students that were quarantined there. So you subtract that number, across the rest of the schools, it's a pretty small number, really. So, and I just want to publicly say the staff at Irvin was really, really amazing. The leadership there, the teachers there, the nurse there, as well as the Health Alliance and their partnership in making sure that we did not have any more significant spread at that school. And so we're just thankful that they were able to jump on that and mitigate that and make sure that our students were safe and healthy, and our staff as well. So that concludes my COVID-19 report, and I'd be glad to take any questions at this time.
Board members, comments or questions? Anybody? Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, board members, we will move to 6.03. We'll ask Ms. Kelly Klutz to come in and give us the budget update.
So today we'll continue our discussion on our budget proposal. And today was, I'm going to skip ahead a couple of screens and then I'll go backwards. So today is the Monday, April the 12th in the red circle where we had our public hearing. We gave the public an opportunity to give us feedback on our budget. And we're just going to have a general budget discussion. And for the most part, that is just answering the questions that the board has had previously. So we'll dive into that in just a moment with the idea of adopting a proposed budget next Monday on the 19th. Okay. So we're just going to go back to a couple of questions that were asked by the board. There's been specific questions about ADM. And so ADM is our average daily membership, and that's generally the number that we get funding from. So the state projects our ADM, and they projected it, and then this year most LEAs or most school systems in the state were below their projections. And normally if you're below your projections, if you're below more than 100 students, then you have to send back half of the money that DPI sent you for the number of students that you're missing. But there was legislation that made an exception because of COVID, and so no one had to send any money back to DPI this year. So our funding for 2021, which is our current year that we're in, was based on our average daily membership of 34,458. Our funding projection, the number of students we expect to be in our schools in August of 21-22, so this coming August, is 34,340. So you can see those numbers are very similar. So we're expecting to have all of our students return into our classrooms, and therefore the funding will follow those students. So you can see there's about 100 difference, but that's not significant to our funding formula. Our ADM at November 2020 was 32,782, and on the right you see a document that I picked up off of DPI's website that measures average daily membership. You can see that the last report that they have is of month 4. They are a little bit behind. This is normal for DPI, and they had the last reporting month as month 4 at 32,782. We internally have been able to do a calculation for month 5, and that is the most current data that we have available, and that number is 32,393. It's 392. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. So you can see that it's a constantly moving number. But as far as funding, and what we're most concerned with is the projection of ADM from DPI, and getting within 100 ADM of that, and then our funding will not be impacted. So we feel like our students will return. We feel like even if they don't, they'll be within 100. And then that third kind of safety net is if they don't, everybody in the state will be in the same place we are. So Cabarrus will not be unique. We have more growth than most districts in the state. So if ADM across the state is low, we will be in good company, right? And so we would hope the legislator would also pass something to hold districts harmless if that were the situation going forward, but we have no way of knowing that. So it seems like there was a lot of questions around ADM, so I wanted to spend a minute talking about that. Okay. There was a couple of questions about our MTSS positions, and I'm going to ask Dr. Hill to come up and talk with you about that because I think she will do a much better job than I will. So I'm going to hand it off.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity just to answer some questions that you may have had about MTSS. So MTSS stands for the Multi-Tiered System of Supports. It is a North Carolina model that we use here. And the purpose is to provide school improvement through research-based and academic and behavioral practices, as well as SEL, which is social emotional learning. And so it's a systems approach which makes sure that we're looking at all layers of students. So we have students that are in need of what we call universal supports, or our core. And then we have supports that we provide for students at the supplemental level, and then our students that are at the most need. And so currently, all of our schools are working really hard to provide for our students and to work on providing core instruction and also those interventions at the different levels. So the really important thing that the MTSS coaches will allow us to do, the positions, it will really help us to coach our teachers. So whether a school has 500 or 1,500 students, there's really a strong need to have someone who is well-versed in MTSS to provide supports for those teachers at every level of the process that we're providing for our students. Problem solving at each level requires knowledge of core instruction, like I talked about, the different interventions, and the data pieces that come in and out of each of those intervention pieces. So they have to be able to collect that data, analyze the data, make determination if students are appropriately responding to the instruction, and then determining what we need to do next. So these positions would work with schools and teachers directly to help support those students. Right now, the way that we support our teachers in our schools with MTSS is 2 people at the district level who are trying to support 42, 43 different schools. So it makes it extremely difficult to provide the support that those individual schools need. Are there any additional questions?
Board members, comments or questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Dr. Hill.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hill. We've had a couple of earlier questions, and I wanted to hit those real quickly, and if you want to me go into any more detail, I'm happy to do that. So one question was related to our dean position. So why would we need to add dean positions if there's a decreased number of students in our schools? And so just the response to that is these positions is our budget is preparing for August of 21. So and we're expecting all of our students to return. We're hoping that even more return like a normal growth year, but we are expecting to have at least the number of students that we had in the previous year. So there wouldn't be a decrease. Also, that's been an ongoing request for about a decade at least, so it's really not related to ADM or number of students. It's really related to the function of the role. There was a question about non-certified staff that we're hiring, and we're not actually hiring any non-certified staff in this budget. So this is a budget proposal, so we're not hiring any of these positions until the funding becomes available for it. So this is the request for these items, and so there were no requests for non-certified staff, so I wasn't real sure what that was. Now there is a request for salary increase for non-certified staff, so that may be the question, but I'm not sure. There was a question
Ms.
about-
Adcock, Ms. Klutz, she's going to.
Yes.
So my question, because I'm the one that asked that, is that the substitutes? I mean, where are the substitutes? I know we talked about we were adding substitutes that would possibly be covered under funding, and then after that funding was out, that we might have to get rid of those. I didn't know if substitutes was in that, in those numbers anywhere.
Okay, so you're talking about when we added the short-term temporary substitutes. It was unrelated to the budget document, right? This was COVID-related. So the funds, the normal substitute funds were there in our budget this year. And because students were not in classrooms, and we were trying to limit the number of substitutes or various people into our buildings, we had additional funds to use for that. And so it's the funds that were budgeted for substitutes that we paid these positions for. That role is there's a funding element, but there's also a benefit earning element that creates a bigger problem for us. And so keeping those positions as short-term assignments and non-benefit earning doesn't cost us any more than it would just to bring a classroom, a sub in a classroom. But to add those permanently, then we have to have retirement, we have to pay retirement, we have to pay hospitalization. So that is a significant increase to the budget, and we're not recommending doing that for that reason.
So just to clarify, just so I'm understanding, the substitutes that we hired under the COVID funding, once that funding is out, then those people will not actually be substituting here anymore.
So those folks are on that, what we call as a short-term assignment, which means that they have a substitute position every day, a guaranteed substitute position every day until the end of this school year. In August, during the normal school year, they will go back on their normal rotation where when a teacher calls in sick, they put their absence in a system called ASOP. ASOP then calls subs, and subs acquire their daily assignments in that software. So we'll just go back to the way that we did it before.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Kelly, could you speak to attrition? I think that's just one of the areas that maybe we need to talk a little bit more about.
Sure. I'm going to speak a lot about it in the ESSER presentation. Is there something specific you want me to hit now?
No, if you think that's more appropriate, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. Were there any other questions that you received?
I think that's all that I had.
That's all I had as well.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Carpenter?
I didn't know if it was going to be taken up in this. I know that the governor's budget came out, and I know with that he was putting a lot of money into education, but I didn't know if he was thinking a lot of that money was going to be coming from the CARES money. I mean, where he was going to get it, and I didn't know if we were having any of that money in our budget, or where were we going to get the money if he was going to do all this stuff he was going to do for education? Because a lot of it was with teachers' increases in salary, and he was doing it with not just teachers, but he was talking about increases for our non-certified and bonuses. And I know we didn't have any of that in our budget. So if this takes place, where's the money going to come from? Because we don't have it in our budget.
Right. So if they pass, so they'll work this budget just like they do every year, right? The governor will issue a recommended budget, the House will then, and then the Senate will then, and then they'll come to a compromise. And so it'll be a combination of funds the way that it always is. So normally state tax revenues will become the biggest source of those revenues. They will have COVID and relief funds that are allocated to the state, and then they'll have some options to allocate those down to schools or in various ways. But it is not our funds. Our ESSER funds are separate from that. If the state passes if the state passes a budget, they will have a revenue source applicable to that applies. Not us, correct.
Kelly, I think that's probably one thing that needs to be clarified, that we're talking about our local budget here, and then the ESSER funds are separate. So I think
Yes, ma'am.
maybe, yes, if
That
you'll
is-
speak to that, I think that just needs clarification.
Yes, ma'am. So the budget that we've been working on since November is really just our budget recommendation to our county commissioners. It's just really that small component that we're asking the local county commissioners to fund for us. ESSER is federal funds, and it's separated. That's kind of why I requested to do the budget update at the beginning of the meeting and the ESSER funds at the end, because they really are two separate entities, and we should look at them differently.
Does that answer your question, Ms. Carpenter?
Yeah, because I want to make, because everybody has heard it, and a lot of people heard that budget, and teachers and non-certified, and they say, okay, we're going to get it, and then they look at our budget, don't see it there, and want to know, are we going to get it, are we not? And so it needs to be explained, where it will come from, if they will get it, and that's why I wanted it explained out.
Yeah, it is confusing because there's extra funds that are coming down from all different places right now. But this component, the one that you're talking about, is very much the normal process, right? The state decides we're going to give teachers a pay increase. The state decides we're going to give state employees a pay increase or not, whatever. And they will provide the funding for that. We just have to match the local portion, which we normally do, and the county is gracious to do that for us. And so that just follows the normal process. But again, I agree, it gets confusing when you have all of these different funding sources that happen to align with the timing in which we're presenting our normal budget to you.
Okay, board members, any other comments or questions? Are we good? Okay.
And I just want to say really quickly that this document is the same document that you've seen in the last two meetings. It's just consolidated in one place so that on Monday, a week from today, you will have the entire document and you won't have to go searching. So everything is the exact same that you've seen before. It's just here in one place.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, now we will move to 6.04 for the middle school realignment recommendation, and I will turn it over to Interim Superintendent Brian Schultz and Mr. Matthew Cropper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to invite in Mr. Cropper and Ms. Lane, and perhaps Ms. Szymanski as well. Okay. So I'm excited that we're actually here at this point. It's been an eight-month journey that we started back in September to look at our middle school realignment process. As you all know, the Roberta Road Middle School has been approved. You all have selected a name for that school, very appropriate name, by the way, and it is well on its way under construction. In fact, I know several people looked at it last week, and it's really amazing the progress that they're making right now with that building. So with building a new school always comes the realignment process, and it's kind of a work of passion, a work of love, and a work of necessity because the great thing that we have here in Cabarrus County Schools is everybody loves their schools, and they're passionate about their schools, and they love them, and we love that. About it, and we're also confident in the fact that we're going to put forth a very detailed and comprehensive realignment plan to ensure that love of people's schools and to keep that going here in Cabarrus County Schools. So as I said, this has been a comprehensive process that's involved staff, public, over an eight-month period of time, and I think what you'll see here in a minute, the recommendation of the staff and the public who have provided us feedback over the last 8 months, you'll see a plan that balances school utilization. You'll see a plan that accounts for the future growth. I know I just had a meeting with Lloyd Payne today, the City of Concord manager, and he said we just tipped over 100,000 residents in Concord alone. And the growth is just massive. So we have to make sure that we account for that future growth in this plan. Also, you'll see a plan that establishes clear feeder patterns and that provide continuity over the course of those feeder patterns. It takes into account the proximity of the students and the schools. It also reflects the demographic diversity of our wonderful community. It makes improvements not just for middle school. It also makes improvements for elementary and high schools while minimizing the number of students that we move in that process. So at this time, I'd like to introduce and turn it over to Mr. Matthew Cropper of Cropper GIS Consulting. Mr. Cropper?
Thank you, Superintendent Schultz, Chair Grimsley, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight to present to you. I'm Matthew Cropper with Cropper GIS Consulting.
Mr. Cropper, let me stop you for a moment. Is your mic on?
I think it is now.
Perfect.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here to present to you guys tonight. I am here to present the realignment recommendations on behalf of the internal planning team, the IPT. And as Superintendent Schultz said, it's a body of work that has encompassed 8 months of hard work of people, community members in this county who are putting together this recommendation. So tonight I'd like to give you an overview of the background and our objectives, what were our objectives in doing this work, and the criteria that we had followed in evaluating the realignment options as we did our work. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the stakeholders, the review of the stakeholders, and those who were involved in the process. And then give you an overview of the timeline and talk about the recommendation ultimately, and then talk about next steps. But I want to make sure that you can see, I'm not seeing my screen progress on the presentation. Let's see. Well, you do have a printout in front of you. Everybody should have a printout of the actual presentation that I'm going to give. And should I hold for a second? Try to. There we go. It looks like it's caught up. Maybe some lag due to just the sort of network lag, but you can follow along with the printout that we have provided to you as well. As I said, I am Matthew Cropper. We are with Cropper GIS Consulting, and we do this kind of work with school districts all over the country. We have worked with you guys in the past on your previous realignment, and are honored to be working here with you on this study. This is our specialty and the kind of work that we do on a day-to-day basis, and we bring expertise in working with other districts across the United States, as well as technology. The mapping, geographic information systems enables us to look at students on a map, count students in an accurate and informed manner, and be able to make decisions quickly. And so that's really what we bring to the table. We are not here to provide a recommendation. We are here to help facilitate the work of stakeholders in this process to come to a recommendation. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But our objectives and our background for the process, why are we here, and why was there a need to realign? The district is in the midst of a capital improvement plan, and you are adding a new middle school to the batch of schools that you have. There's a new middle school plan to open in fall of 2022, and this really necessitates a realignment of the current middle school zones. Middle schools are the focus and have been the focus of this realignment effort, but we're looking at elementaries and high schools to see if their adjustments should be made to relieve overcrowding and or align feeder patterns with the new middle school zones that were being drafted. So we were focused on developing options that best met the realignment criteria that were established by the school district. Since you did do some realignment recently, we were also focused on students who were realigned last time and looking at what areas were moved and trying to minimize the impact on students who may have been moved more than one time, or to minimize any student moving again if that did arise. And we have evaluated that, and I have some data on that as well. And like I said, the focus was middle schools, but we did look at elementary and high school to align your feeder patterns, and also to help provide some overcrowding at some of your schools, particularly Hickory Ridge High School and Patriots Elementary School, were the two schools outside of the middle school realm that we provided some capacity relief for. So some of the criteria, these are the rules that we followed as we constantly evaluated options and looked at realignment considerations and different options. These are all the criteria, and think of these all as in one basket, and the best plan will be one that touches on these criteria, addresses these criteria as best as possible, but not focus solely on one element of the criteria, because if we focus only on one element of the criteria, you start to deviate further away from other elements of the criteria. And so the balancing school facility utilization is on the criteria, and that, if sometimes people ask, were the criteria prioritized? Is there any priority order of these criteria? And I would say that, like I said, they all really should be looked at holistically as a whole. But facility utilization is one that's an objective and a criteria. So facility utilization, if there is one that takes precedent, that one is one that is is of some of the utmost importance. So these criteria are to balance school facility utilization and try to make every effort to have equitable utilization across the district in accordance with the capacities of the schools. And also, while doing that, account for future growth. So as we were building a plan, we're looking at providing capacity relief to schools, but we're also looking at being mindful of future growth potential. So some schools may need a little more relief because we know that there's growth coming in, and that is particularly the case for schools such as Harris Road Middle School, as well as Patriots Elementary School. Close proximity, so trying to assign students close to the home if at all possible, and looking at transportation efficiency, maximizing busing efficiencies of transportation. And so those kind of go hand in hand. So trying to assign students as close to their home as possible, and if you can do that, that lends to transportation efficiency, fewer miles driven on the bus. These were the proximity element of the criteria was the element that was probably the most challenging in this study, because there are some communities that will have to travel further than where they currently go to school. And we have evaluated it over and over, and we understand that, and those that made the recommendation, the IPT, are aware of that. But it's something that's just inevitable in the plan, and that some students will have to go further than where they currently go to accomplish our objectives. There is another provision called a legacy enrollment, which the district is offering to further reduce the impact on students. So any student who will be 5th, 8th, or 12th grades in the first year of the realignment plan, they have the option to stay at their current school. This provision does not extend to siblings, and transportation will not be provided to these kids. But this is just a further measure that the district is taking to reduce the impact on students who may be coming into that final year of that grade at the elementary, middle, or high school. They can finish out at the existing school, provided they get their own transportation to the school. Minimize the impact on students. So we were always counting how many students were impacted, and trying to keep that at a minimum. So we were able to evaluate how many students were impacted in each option, and be able to measure that and see how the options relate. Account for economic, cultural, and ethnic diversity. So looking at the demographics of the schools. What are the demographics of the schools currently? What is the county demographic composition, and how does that relate to the school's demographic composition? And if at all possible, try to bring schools closer to mirror what the county demographic composition is, if at all possible. And so we were looking at demographic data as part of this in evaluating options in the recommendation. Try to make every effort to establish contiguous zones. So don't create a satellite area. Don't go in and draw an area around a subdivision that's in the middle of one zone and realign it to another school. And that's something that's important, and that's usually best practice to kind of have one zone per school, if at all possible. And the final one is to use major roads and natural boundaries wherever feasible to define attendance zones. So this is just trying to draw the lines along major roads, railroads, things that could be barriers for travel and transportation. And this is whenever possible. We can't always do this, but it's something that we were mindful of as we started to look at zones. It's important to know that another part of this is don't draw the line down the middle of a residential road. draw the line down major roads so that you're not splitting a subdivision or a neighborhood in half and sending them to different schools. Trying to keep them, if they have to move, they move together. And that's really the element of that criteria that we were looking at. Okay, so there were a number of stakeholders in this process that were, as we worked through the study. And everybody had a role and a different task to do, and they all participated as we had intended, and we had a lot of good input and participation from all of these stakeholders. So the consultant, that is us, we're hired to schedule and facilitate these meetings and really to help manage the data side, mapping, taking input from the committees, and taking that and putting that into maps, and taking their feedback on ways they think we should deliver information, and incorporating that into our presentations. And all of that information and all of that stuff are things that we did as consultants using our expertise and our experience and our technology. We were not here to recommend a plan. I am providing a recommendation on behalf of the IPT, but we didn't vote on anything. We didn't vote on any plan. The plan was voted on by the IPT, which is the internal planning team. And these were key school district administrators and people from across the county, including central office, transportation, planning, and then also school principals, people who were in charge of special programs, and anybody that we felt needed to be around the table for this conversation. They were invited and they participated in this process. They were the ones who reviewed options, reviewed the work, the entire body of work that was being done. We met every other week with this group, September through March, and very proud of these individuals. They were able to maintain focus and objectivity on the big picture, thinking about what's best for all children in this county, and not focused on just the needs of their school alone or their child or the neighborhood that they live in. They set that aside and focused on what was best for the entire county and all of its students. And they reviewed all the information. They were in the loop in all of our communications, and they were the ones who voted on this recommendation, and the recommendations being brought forth by this group. We also had another group called the Public Advisory Committee, and they were a sampling of community members. They do live in areas all over the county, and they served as an initial sounding board to us. And so if we had ideas and thoughts, we did share some concepts, some drafts, options with them to get feedback. And they also gave us input about the information that we were sharing and telling us what they thought about the data that we were sharing. For example, they were instrumental in giving us feedback and telling us, the data seems to, at first we were sharing a 50-page document of statistics and maps. And one of the key pieces of information they gave us was, this does seem to be complex. There's a lot of data at all three levels. It's hard to kind of wrap your head around all of it. And they asked us to try to see, is there a way to make it simplify the message, simplify what we're sharing in a way that people can understand it better. And so we went through a process of developing a scoring metric and some star charts and other things to make things a little bit more easy to communicate with the general public. They did not vote on a recommendation, but they did give us key input through the course of the study. They met from November through January for this study, last November through this January. The general public were informed through the website. We did make all of the information available on a realignment webpage that was posted, and materials that had been considered and shared with the internal planning team and the public advisory committee were shared with the general public so that they can go there and look at the information. There was a general feedback form on there. At any time from the very beginning, they could go on there and provide input to us about options, about the process, anything they felt was important. The public could provide us feedback that was studied and reviewed and shared with all the stakeholders. We also had a series of public information sessions where we invited the public to come look and see the maps that were being considered, and also had a Q&A session after that. And all the materials that questions that were not answered at the Q&A were recorded and put into a frequently asked question document on the webpage. So we did our best to listen to the public and listen to their concerns. It's not to say that we always are able to make changes based off of what the public wants, because it's very hard to do a realignment study and make everybody happy. When we're moving students and moving communities to accomplish our objectives, it's inevitable that people will be impacted. And we heard that. We did hear concerns of those who are from some members of the community that are being impacted. And all we can say is that we listened to their comments, we studied their feedback in detail, and we tried to make adjustments to adhere to what their concerns were as best as possible, as long as it did not deviate us from our recommendation on developing a plan that's solid, that's going to stand the test of time for Cabarrus County. The superintendent works with the internal plan team and monitors progress, updates the school board on progress in being made through the course of the study, and so that was the role of the superintendent. And then the school board basically is more high level. School board was not voting at these IPT meetings or any of the meetings. We did have some school board members attend the IPT meetings so that they could help inform the larger board on the progress and things like that. But they weren't active in voting, but they did provide input and did, were considering and looking at the work that was being done by the different stakeholders. But the school board, you guys, are the ones who will ultimately vote and approve on a plan. So no plan is final until the board approves this plan. So we're going to go over the timeline. You could see that we worked from a long time, from September up till today. Went through the course of several months of work with the different stakeholders through the course of this timeline. We started by putting all the information together, materials, maps, statistics, all kinds of the public webpage and online interactive maps, just preparing the foundation for the realignment study. When we got into the next month in October, we went to the public the first time, and we shared an overview of the process, the timeline, what the public can expect, how they can participate, where they can find information, and basically just giving them an overview of this is what's coming, and this is how you guys can give us input. We did also in this month meet with the IPT, and we started off with 3 baseline options, and those were just starting points for the IPT to look at and react to, and they certainly were modified, and new options were developed through the course of this study. As a result of that October sessions, a 4th option was added to the mix as we were continuing to explore any option at this point. We were trying to find any option, put any option on the table that could be considered. We weren't ruling anything out at this point. We got back together in November, and it was our first time meeting with the PAC, the Public Advisory Committee, and sharing some maps with them, some information, 4 maps that we had been drafting, that the IPT had been drafting to get some feedback from them. And this is where the PAC took a step back and said, this is good, but the information could be more user-friendly. There's a lot of statistics and data that they just kind of felt like they were getting lost in it. And so we started to work towards adding some things to make that better. We did survey the PAC for some feedback and just asked them some of their thoughts. And that information was shared with the IPT and considered as we continued our work. Continuing on, getting into December, we brought forth a new scoring metric, and which helped kind of simplify all the statistics and data, putting into a one-page document where you could see evaluating each realignment option to the criteria through a way of just giving them scores, and as it relates for each element of the criteria. And that helped us see how the current zones scored versus each particular option. And then you could start to evaluate and start to understand it a little bit better. And it was appreciated by the PAC, and the IPT also found it to be pretty useful. In these meetings in December, we removed option 1B and then renamed options to blue, yellow, and pink. And these options were presented to the public, and there was an open public survey at that time. So the public, this is the first time the public got to see the options that were being considered, the drafts, and were able to give us input, direct input regarding the options that were being considered. And then we got back together in January and reviewed the public input. We did create an option green, and the option green was was developed as a combination of continued study of our realignment work, also input that had been provided by the general public regarding some considerations and some options that they felt was best for their community. We started to evaluate that to see how that could fit and how that could work. During this series of meetings, we eliminated an option, and then we presented the green, blue, and yellow options to the PAC, to the Public Advisory Committee. The Public Advisory Committee and the IPT they unanimously chose to remove option green. Like I said, the Public Advisory Committee did not vote, but we did poll them to see how they felt about it, and they were unanimous in their thoughts that aligned with the IPT, and that the green option was not a good plan for the county as a whole. And at this meeting in January, since there was a lot of feedback being provided by the public, and we were still looking at things, and we extended the process. So we added another public information session just to make sure that we could do our due diligence and share the work that had been done up to that date with the public, because we felt like there was more info to share, and a few more IPT meetings were held as well. We got back in February after we had that third public information session, and that is when the green option was formally removed. So the green option was formally removed in February because it just did not did not adhere to the objectives and the criteria as well as other options that had been considered and had been developed to that point. The community was very vocal, and they were behind. And certain elements of the community, I shouldn't say the whole community, but small segments of the community in the county had concern about how they were being impacted. And their option was one that addressed their concerns, but it also did not provide enough capacity relief to the new Harris Road Middle School, among several other reasons. But we did put together a thorough explanation and tried to explain to the public why that option was not considered. So I felt like it was a very good effort from the IPT and the district to reach out to the public and just to try to communicate with them and tell them why their option was, although it was very appreciated, and we did use it to study why it was not, why it didn't make it further. And so I was really proud of the group and doing that and trying and doing as much communication with the people who were trying to get the plan that they liked it through, and so that was done then. And then the blue and yellow options were presented at a public info session in February. So in March, the public, they brought forth a modified plan. They called it Green Plus, and it was a modified plan for Harris Road Middle School in particular, and Northwest Middle. And they did some adjustments to the remainder of the district to adhere to some of the other things that the IPT was looking at. So we reviewed that Green Plus plan and continued to work through evaluation of the options, looking as a whole, the big picture, what's best for all children. The committee revised the blue and yellow options, and just to really align with some feeder patterns. There were some small feeder pattern inefficiencies. But at that time, the IPT voted unanimously on the final revised option blue. They did make an adjustment to the final recommendation in that they liked the blue option the best for as a whole, but they did adopt the option yellow variety for Harris Road Middle and Northwest because they liked the capacity relief that yellow brought to Harris Road Middle down to 87%, and other options did not provide as much capacity relief to Harris Road Middle. And we know Harris Road Middle is one of the schools that needs the greatest amount of relief in this county, and that was really the focus of the IPT, is to give them as much relief as possible with, and so that it can have as much longevity as possible. So I wanted to show you just a little bit of the body of work. So we have just a couple of slides that show you the series of maps that have been evaluated from the start. And so if you do have in your packet or you're following along, you can see that we have the series of maps. The first 3 maps that were considered at the first IPT meeting are shown as option 1, 2, and 3. And you could see that we were looking at different configurations of the maps as we kicked this off with looking at maps with the groups, the stakeholders. You'll see the first option, the blue zone, the sort of the dark blue zone, is the new middle school. And you could see in the first option we were looking at ways to balance utilization and give Harris Road relief. One of the options had area southern part of Harris Road going to the new middle school just to see what kind of input we would get on that. And the other 2 options had different variations, but as we continued to draw this, we found that that Harris Road could get the greatest amount of capacity relief by sending students to Harold Winkler, and so you'll see some of this east-west alignment of zones for Harold Winkler starting to take shape as we work through options. So we had the first 3 options. We got some feedback from the public, or from the different stakeholders, the IPT, and we came back with some new maps, some modified maps. And you'll look at these, if you look at these maps, 1A, 2A, 3A, and the 4th map, which is covered up, there's a Teams window that's covering it up, but I'll identify it when I see it on screen. That there were some modifications. Option 4 was the 4th one. There were some modifications that were made to 2 maps and new maps created. You'll see map 1A is one that does look largely like the map that the public had wanted to consider, the Green Plan, the Green Plus Plan. And this map looked at, instead of taking students in the south part of Harris Road to Winkler or the new middle school, we looked at what happens if we take the northern part of Harris Road Middle to Northwest Cabarrus Middle School. So that was an option configuration that evaluated that. And then the other maps were modifications, different shapes for the new middle school, and also different schools and communities impacted. You could see 3A and 4, we had brought some, looking at sending some students to Concord Middle School to try to bring up their utilization. And so that was part of what we were evaluating. We were really looking at all options, trying to develop a plan here. And as we drafted options. So these were the 4 maps that were presented at the IPT in October. When we got to November, we brought those 4 maps. We did bring them to the public, or to the IPT, some modifications. And so the map series that we continued to look at in November had a variety of shapes and different schools impacted as we continued our work. This was still open exploration. We were still looking at How many ways could we accomplish our objectives? What different ways could we shape the zones to try to bring balance and adhere to our objectives and our criteria? And I was hoping it could pop up here. Maybe give it a second. It takes a little bit of, just a minute, a second for it to pop up.
Mr. Carver, would it help if we just switched over to the web from Mr. Wygren's computer? And
Would it be faster, you think?
yeah, I think we could do that. So,
If you think so, I mean, so you can follow along as I'm presenting,
I think so.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
Yes. You wish to,
Let me take
do you want to
get
swap
that
out
set up.
computers
Take a
or
break, is that set?
take control and share? Just open it up from your laptop? Yeah. Should I present from over there, you think? Or if you would follow along, then you could just scroll along and I'll present from here. That's fine. One more, yeah, that's where we left off. That'd be great. Okay. Thank you. So yes, so these were the 4 maps that were looked at the IPT, the 5th IPT meeting in November. You could see some different configurations of the maps here. Again, there are still some areas where we were looking at drawing students into Concord to try to bring up their utilization, but as we continued to work through that, we found that in bringing up Concord's utilization, it also brought a further imbalance in the demographics, and it was something that the committee chose not to consider because it wasn't bringing up the utilization enough, and it was also bringing more imbalance to their demographics as it relates to the county. You could see that we were even looking at other things in extending the Harris Road line north. That was quickly taken off of consideration. And different configurations for the new middle school as we were considering to look at options. You can go to the next slide, please. Back one. Okay, go back one more. Okay, go forward, please. Thank you. One more. Yes. So in November, this was the first, the PAC meeting 1 maps that we were shared with the Public Advisory Committee. You can see option 1B does have that a configuration that looked at Harris Road Middle School north of the north part of Harris Road going to Northwest Cabarrus Middle instead of the south. That was ruled out. That was considered, the PAC did not favor that option because of the higher utilization at Harris Road Middle. And so that was, the real objective of this is to provide capacity relief and make best use of the buildings and the space that you have. And they felt like this would still put Harris Road Middle in an overcrowding situation in the very near future. Other maps you could see start to look closer to the recommendation. You see the other 3 maps have a east-west configuration for the Winkler Middle School here, east-west, and they're all kind of looking at east-west, pulling some of the South Harris Road Middle, south of Harris Road Middle out to give them the capacity relief they need. In the new middle school, looking somewhat, starting to take some shape and some consistency across the maps. The next one, please. So we had 3 options that we did share at the public info session. You could see that this is the blue, yellow, and pink. These were in December. These were the 3 maps that were shared and considered. You see the blue map. This is one that the committee really started to look closely at. They were looking at all of them, but this map was scoring pretty well as it relates to the criteria, as well as yellow. Pink was one that was not scoring as well as the others for all of it was just not adhering to the criteria as well as the other 2 maps, blue and yellow. You can go to the next slide. Then we brought the green option back in. Now this looks different than what the public had brought us, because the original one that just had the area north of the northern part of Harris Road Middle going to Northwest Cabarrus didn't give Harris Road enough capacity relief. So we were trying to make an adaptation to that map to see with giving Harris Road capacity relief, how would it look? And so we added more students to Harris Road. In addition to this, to give Harris Road an adequate capacity to be able to hold students now and in the future. And then we had the blue and the yellow zones were still under consideration here. Pink was ruled out, like I had said. So these were the 3 maps that we were focused on at this point in January. Green was ruled out, like I had said, per the timeline. The green option did not make it to the next level here. And blue and yellow were the ones that were sort of the final runners, the ones that were looking, that the IPT was focused on to try to provide some, to just do our job and accomplish our objectives. There were some adjustments here. You see they're called yellow R and blue R. There were some minor adjustments made to feeder patterns for the new middle school to help give us as clean of a feeder pattern alignment as possible. And so, but they were really only done adjustments were made between Winkler and the new middle school. So if you could scroll that box up a little bit more, just a little bit. Yeah, thank you. So the public has been involved, and we put this slide in here just to demonstrate the amount of input that was provided by the public. We had nearly 1,000 comments received through the course of the study via general feedback and email correspondence. We did have 3 virtual public info sessions, and we had over 400 people attend. And I remember last time we did this in person, public info sessions at J.M. Robinson High School, and we would have about the same number of people attend, about 200 people per session. And so it wasn't a smaller number than what we would normally expect. So we felt like that was very good in getting input from a large number of people. The Public Advisory Committee, like I mentioned, was another outreach to the public to give us further input. We felt like it was important to note the community suggestions. The community actually gave us suggested maps that we took in, modeled, ran statistics on, and evaluated with the IPT. And we also had a realignment webpage, like I mentioned, that received thousands of hits per month, people going on there looking at, keeping up with the progress of the stakeholders. This is the recommendation here. So you could see that this recommendation was the blue option, the most recent revised blue option, with the exception of the Harris Road middle school zone. They extended it to match the yellow option. So more students were going into Winkler from Harris Road in the final recommendation that it did match the yellow. And this was just really done to try to make sure that this had is longevity, and that Harris Road Middle had as much relief as it possibly could have. You'll see the new middle school does come down and it pulls students from J and Freeze, and then also students from C.C. Griffin and Hickory Ridge Middle School, in addition to a large share of Harold Winkler. But Northwest Cabarrus Middle School is not impacted in this recommendation. And you see a small section of Concord. It was actually more of the feeder to the high school. Concord, Mount Pleasant were not impacted in this. You'll see that Northwest was not impacted. A lot of that is due to aligning with your capital improvement plan as well. There are adjustments and improvements that are planned for this Northwest Cabarrus region to the middle school and the high school. That's going to add capacity to that school and to that area. And so this recommendation not only provides capacity relief and balance and relief to Harris Road Middle, but also aligns you very well to as you phase into your next elements of your capital improvement plan. We did have our elementary recommendation, some adjustments down around Harrisburg and Patriots. An area was taken off of, along Far Mill Road, sent from Patriots to Harrisburg, and then Harrisburg had an adjustment on the north side of the railroad tracks down there, feeding into Pitt School Road. And this was mainly done, moved from Patriots to Harrisburg, just because there's a lot of growth down there, a lot of ongoing residential development along Rocky River Road and Far Mill Road, and this was done as a measure to give Patriots capacity relief, and so that it can take some of that future development that's already being constructed down there. The high school recommendation, you could see we were with the focus of trying to minimize the impact, focus on middle schools, but we did move some students down along Far Mill Road that were moved to the middle school. They also traveled to J.M. Robinson. They also were realigned, or J.M. Robinson, this recommendation. And this is good because this provides much needed capacity relief to Hickory Ridge High School. So although our focus was middle schools, this gives Hickory Ridge, puts them below 100%. And they're currently way up there, around 115, 116%. And so it not only giving the middle school schools relief and balancing, but also giving your high school, addressing some of your high school utilization. So we want to talk a little bit about the recommendation and regarding to adherence to the criteria. Just a couple of points as it relates to the criteria. As it relates to student impact, all the criteria were adhered to or improved as it relates to the current zones, while focusing on impacting as few students as possible. So this option has one of the lesser impacts of the options that were being considered. Utilization improves at all three levels. All schools that are currently experiencing overcrowding are relieved in this plan, this recommendation. The demographics have been maintained or improved in terms of balance of the county at all levels. Feeder patterns are maintained for elementary to middle school, and middle school to high school feeder patterns have improved in this recommendation. The new middle school will feed entirely into to J.M. Robinson High School, I believe, is in the recommendation as well. And so that's something that the district was looking at as one of the things, and other options did not do that. Future growth, the growth is inevitable. There's, as you guys all live here, you see it as you drive to work and shopping and everything. And this plan does position you to be able to bolster some of that growth that's happening. And transportation, this is the best option for the county for transportation efficiency. Even though some people are going to have to move further away to school, this option is the best plan for transportation efficiency as well. So if you look at utilization, the new school is at 83% utilization. 993 estimated students from in zone are estimated at that school. And so we did want to build enough capacity in that building, or design it so that there was space for students to come in from out of zone for the special programming that's being planned for there. The other middle schools, this relief provided to most overcrowded schools. Harris Road goes from 116% to 87% utilization. And that's a really substantial improvement to them, and gives them enough space to accommodate some ongoing growth in existing neighborhoods and new communities. Harold Winkler was at 98 right now. It takes it to 81%. So it gives Harold Winkler capacity relief. Hickory Ridge Middle, 92 to 76%. So we bring all these schools down closer to the county average. I think your average utilization at middle school is around 77%. And so that puts you, trying to get to schools as close to 77 as we can. Elementary schools, like I said, Patriots to Harrisburg gives them that relief. And then Harrisburg moves students to Pitts Road for feeder pattern efficiency. And then high school is another one that was just sort of came along for the ride, but it was a really good element of the recommendation. And that Hickory Ridge High School goes from 111%, which is current utilization of that school, to 98%. And then J.M. Robinson goes from 67 to 73%. So J.M. Robinson was a little lower, and so this brings them up to 73%, which was seen as a positive by administrators and staff. I think you maybe missed one. There you go. Impact on students. So you could see 132 elementary students are moved in this recommendation. So providing relief, but trying not to move too many. 1,441 middle school students are moved in this, and that's not too bad, given that 990 of those are assigned to the new middle school. So that's pretty good in terms of minimizing the impact, but still doing our job and populating schools. High schools, 141 students were moved in this recommendation. And then there was the double impact, the students who were moved last realignment, we were able to count that and consider that, and there were 8 students who were moved last time who would be potentially moved this time. But the district is offering those 8 students the legacy provision so that they can finish out at their same school and not be impacted again. So really no students would be impacted more than once because they're offered the legacy provision. Demographics, the recommendation provides an overall improvement to demographics of the elementary schools. The middle schools demographics do improve as you compare it to the county demographics. And the new middle school opens with demographics that do closely resemble the county. And the demographics of the high schools are mostly unchanged as compared to the current zones. Feeder patterns, when you look at feeder patterns, that we do have a relatively similar efficiency of splits between elementary to middle school. Pitt School Road changes. Currently, Pitt School Road is split to 3 different middle schools. But in this plan, Pitt School Road feeds entirely into the new middle school, 100%. So that helps resolve some feeder pattern inefficiency there. And the middle of the high school, Winkler is currently split to 4 different high schools. And this recommendation has Winkler only split 50-50, only to 2 high schools. It's a balanced split and between Cox Mill and West Cabarrus High School, which is what we try to strive for if we do have to split a school. The transportation, it's an efficient zone for the new middle school. The new Roberta Road Middle has a zone that captures students near and around the school while providing capacity relief to schools in the area. It's the overall best plan for distances and the most efficient plan while addressing other elements of the criteria. We had, like I said, transportation was around the table and at the IPT, and they reviewed and vetted these options along with the recommendation. They do support this recommendation. And then although the recommendation from the IPT does provide the best effort for transportation, there are areas that will have to travel farther. That's what I had mentioned before. But it should be noted that the distances, the impact on the families who have to travel further, it's still as much, that their commute is still much shorter than what a lot of families in the county have to experience as they travel to school. And so they are still below the average, and although that there are some families that will be impacted and have to travel further. Program choice was another one that was that really is a benefit to this, in that the recommendation maintains the STEM and IB pathways to Coltrane Webb and Jay and Freeze, and Weddington to Harold Winkler. Continues the successful magnet program from the northwest and west side of the county for Jay and Freeze and Winkler. And so the zones align well with how programs are feeding from elementary to middle school and as they progress from elementary to middle school. And the dual language pathways as well. Mandarin program is in a central location for the new middle school. That's where the Mandarin program will be housed, and builds a strong pathway for immersion programming. We have an 83% utilization of the new middle school in recommendation, so that gives you capacity to expand the program if you wanted to grow that program. And then utilization at Winkler allows for continued growth of the IB program there as well. So in addition to all the other elements that we also help with the programming and choice and help maintain your robust and good programming that you have in the county. Accounting for future growth. So this is a proactive plan. Could you scroll up just a little bit to get that box to look? Oh, sorry. There, that's fine. This recommendation focuses on providing enough capacity as possible for future growth. We also are being mindful of the capital plan, so this aligns you very well for the next phase of construction, and to try to minimize the impact on communities when you do need, if and when you do need to look at realignment down the road. Southern County students have moved out of Patriots to account for ongoing development, so we did that to be proactive. And then the northwestern part of the county, the students moved from Harris Road Middle School to provide relief while also providing accounting for future growth. And I'm sorry for the long presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. We have a lot of supporting documents and materials in the back too to help answer questions if you have them.
Yeah, I'll just say some closing comments, Matt, and thank you for that. And I do apologize. It's a lengthy presentation, but it was a lengthy process. It was 8 months. And we could have made this about a 3-hour presentation if we wanted to. There was, I hope that it gives the board members and the public the weight of which we took concern over this process and all the feedback that was out there. I'd say just to kind of reiterate a couple of points, that it really sets up our middle schools for the future growth that we're seeing as we drive around in our county. It's just staggering sometimes when we look at it. But this recommendation really sets us up. And I say, as Mr. Cropper said, when you look at that capital plan, it aligns perfectly with that. And I think that's one of the main things that a board does in working with auxiliary services, looking at that future capital plan. And it's more important now than it is ever. And you see the convergence of realignment and capital plan at the same time. And I'll just say, it makes improvements, and I'll list the schools: Harrisburg, Patriots, Pitt School Road, C.C. Griffin, J.M. Freeze, Winkler Middle, Harris Road, Hickory Ridge Middle School, J.M. Robinson High School, Hickory Ridge High School, while still minimizing the impact on student movement. So the gains that we get in terms of setting up where all those priorities and minimizing the student movement is huge. And then what we realize out of this, the improvements that we realize are program choice, utilization, feeder pattern alignment, long-term growth for Cabarrus County, and it's really, really thoughtful again with that alignment plan. And I'll just say that you could see on the timeline the transparency in this process. And I'll just admit, going into this, I was like, man, realignment in a pandemic was going to be awful. And there were some elements that were challenging in that. But, as you heard Mr. Cropper say, we had great attendance at our public information sessions. We had nearly 1,000 comments on the public feedback site, nearly 1,000. You all received hundreds of emails. I received hundreds of emails about that. Mr. Cropper received hundreds of emails. And then if you go to the ccsrealignment.com website, there are hundreds of documents and thousands of data points on there. So the process has been transparent, it's been inclusive, we've been thoughtful about the feedback that we received. Board members, you all have asked amazing, awesome, challenging questions that have been really good for us and help us really sharpen our thinking as staff and Mr. Carver as a consultant. And so I just think that, and then I say just lastly to that point is that we added another month on the process to make sure that we were really clear with our feedback that we're receiving from our public, from our staff. Added another month on the process, and we added another public information session as a result of that to be as thorough as possible. And I just, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the internal planning team. I mean, the amount of time that our staff, our school principals, our auxiliary services staff, our transportation staff put into this every other week since September. And so on top of what they do on a daily basis to do great things for kids. So I thank them, the Public Advisory Committee. They were dedicated people. They filled out applications to be a part of this. They were very dedicated. They were very objective, gave us great feedback. And then again, just to the public as a whole, attending the meetings, the hundreds of emails, 1,000 feedback points that we got through the form. And then the board, you've been amazing in this. Like in your engagement and your questions, you're seeking to understand so that you can be objective in this process as well. So I want to thank you for that because I don't know that always happens that way. So I appreciate that. So I just appreciate all the work that we poured into this. Mr. Cropper, thank you for your consulting. And I'll be remiss, like Alan Szymanski with Program Choice added so much value to this process. And Francis Lane has been invaluable in this process as well. And they've really been behind the scenes doing a lot of work and gathering a lot of information and really feeding this process throughout the whole time. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And that was a great presentation. So I know board members have spent a lot of time reviewing this, and some of you have taken a tour, others have sat actually on the IPT. So I'm just actually going to just go around and let everyone either make a comment, ask a question. I know we've put a lot of time and effort, but I don't think people understand how much time we really do put into this, behind the scenes as well. So Ms. Adcock, I will start with you. I know you were one that actually participated in the tour, and just any comments or questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say, really, this has been a very good learning experience for me as a new board member, and just being able to hear how this has transpired since I've been on the board since December has been truly very great. And so the things that I really took away is that I decided to go on a bus tour so I could actually see for myself and understand. And, I immediately noticed construction that was on 73 and how we as a school system will have to deal with that at some point, and how is that going to really affect the plans that we choose. The other thing that Mr. Cropper mentioned that I think is worth mentioning again, and I want to make sure I say these numbers right, was that on slide 30, I think it's 31, it says 1,441 students are moved, but when you take out, did you say 990? You really only are moving 351 students. And I think that's very important for us to hear that number, because that is very low. And all of the positives that we will see in the future growth of Cabarrus County with, the improved utilization for all the schools and our averages for middle schools being at 77%, I think this is excellent. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Farr?
Yes, like some of the rest of us, we've been through quite a few redistricting over the years, and I think this is the most thorough and complete that we've ever done. And so I know people are going to be upset, but I think you guys done everything you possibly could do. Always our goal is to align with the capital plan, and it looks like we've done that. That's always been a goal. So just I think you've done a good job.
Thank you. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes, and again, I think the bus tour was very helpful because we went at a very busy time. It was during 5 o'clock traffic. Seeing the Harris Road, turning on Harris Road at that time of day, I think was very interested, and I want to thank everybody that was involved with that, the bus driver, and Francis. We do appreciate everybody that was involved with that, and we went to the furthest points on the northwest part of it and also the Harris Road part, and I think that was very helpful. And again, and I want to thank the parents and everybody that was involved. You know, a lot of times in both sides of it, people will come up, and as Tim had mentioned, we've been involved in a lot of these redistricting, and a lot of times people will say, oh no, don't move my children, but they don't give another alternative. And one thing I liked about this particular one, they gave an alternative, and they gave another suggestion. And then when that one didn't work, they gave another one. So a lot of time and effort has gone into this, and I appreciate that on everybody's part. And we all have put a lot of time into this. And the little box that came, all 121 letters, I read every one of those. And I appreciate everybody's effort. We've all put a lot of time into this, and I want to thank everybody.
Ms. Sandage?
So you're going to have to give me a bit of time because I've probably been a little bit more involved in this than I need to. I've gotten messages on my personal social media pages, personal emails. So I've probably asked a lot of questions of you, Brian, and I've truly appreciate it. If I've given you heartburn, I apologize. I've sent questions in the middle of the night, and you've answered them within 24 hours, so I appreciate them. So I've got a few questions for you, Mr. Cropper, and then I'll go back to Brian, maybe Francis. So can you help us to understand your expertise in this? Now, I saw it bulleted in the presentation, but just walk us through maybe some of the states that you've worked with and some of the accolades that you have that make you the best person for this or the best company for this.
Sure. We've been in business for 15 years, and we've been doing this for school districts all over the country. We've worked in this area. We've worked with Union County. We've worked in Brunswick County, New Hanover County, and just looking at North Carolina. We've also worked in Wayne County, and these are all within the last couple of years. And we've done work with districts of all sizes. We're working in DeKalb County, Georgia right now. And we work with public schools a lot. We also work with, I serve as an expert for the U.S. Department of Justice, the Office of Civil Rights, where I provide consultation on federal desegregation cases. And I've testified in federal court on several cases. And just, we usually have about 6 or 7 active projects going, and probably maybe 10 projects a year that we do. Similar, maybe not this large, some around this size, usually 1 or 2 a year. And we have worked in Cabarrus County as well in the past couple of years.
Is there some type of schooling that you receive for this?
Well, yeah, I'm actually a geographer. I have
Okay.
a degree, which is specialization in geography and geographic information systems. Yes, ma'am.
And I'm not trying to be funny. I just want the public to understand why you're here.
Sure.
You know, and I think that's important. So when you come to a redistricting plan, or when you start to think about what do I do, what are some of your first steps? Like, what are you thinking about?
Well, the first thing we do when we create some baseline options for them to start is we look at the criteria, it's always good to establish framework for realignment, and that's to have a good set of realignment criteria and also a clear set of objectives. And so we look at those criteria, which are common, your criteria are very common to what a lot of other districts across the country use. And we try to build zones that do the best job, that we try to do our best in giving you some drafts that align with the criteria as best as possible. And use our mapping expertise to do that. And that really helps facilitate the discussion, helps the committee members and decision makers hit the ground running, looking at options. But we also have the flexibility where if they don't like anything, we can table everything that we have thought of and develop new options with the committee.
I know you received a lot of questions from our community. Did this help you in how you will work going forward with other communities?
Yes, it did, absolutely. I always say that as a consultant, we teach our clients a lot of things, but we also learn from our clients. And every project we do, we take a little bit away and learn about different things and experiences, and we will adapt some of that for future projects. Yes, ma'am.
So, Brian, when we did the bus tour on Friday, you spoke to how we were rated for transportation. Can you explain that a little bit so folks understand?
Yeah, and hopefully Art doesn't kill me. I'll keep it.
Oh, well, if we don't need to,
No,
then.
it's good. I can explain it. So,
Oh, okay.
our transportation budget is based off of efficiency. So, number of students. I'll give you an example. A bus that has 3 kids on it that drives 20 miles to take them home is less efficient than a bus that has 50 students on it that drives 20 miles total to take them home. So our state, the Department of Public Instruction Transportation Department funds us based on how efficient we are. So we take that transportation efficiency piece very seriously. So the lower rating that we get on transportation efficiency, the less budget that we receive in our county. So it's really important for us to make sure that we're maximizing runs, we're maximizing our routes, and that we have good ridership on our buses.
The other question I had was about the transportation ride time. So when I look at this, I got confused. So it says 50% of riders.
Can you tell us what you're looking at?
I'm sorry.
Maybe we could pull it up. Okay, yeah, that's a great one.
And you explained this to me too on
Yeah,
Friday.
in the supporting documents, Larry, scroll down to the bus. There's a bus time document.
So, and I'll just keep talking.
Yep, go
So when I look at 50% of riders, that tells me that half of the riders on the trip to Concord Middle, I like Concord Middle, that's where my kid is. Concord Middle goes, there's 15 minutes in the AM, but then when I get to this 95% of riders, I don't understand what that means.
So that, and Francis, you say this well, but so correct me if I'm wrong. So when you look at the 95% of riders, that means 95% of all the students that attend that school and ride a bus are home within that amount of time. So when you look at the 50%, that means 50% of the students who ride a bus are home within, so if we just look at, let me go to Concord. So 50% of the students that ride a bus at Concord Middle School get home within 21 minutes in the afternoon and arrive to school within 15 minutes in the morning. 95, so almost the full student body who rides a bus have a 28-minute trip to school and are home within 35 minutes.
And this is what it will look like when everything changes for realignment? Or is this what we're talking about now?
Right, these are the time spans that we try to stay within, and we try to keep that balance, yes. And because we run a 3-tier system, we try to make sure that our routes all finish, kind of start and finish within a certain time frame.
Gotcha, thank you. Francis, on Friday, we talked about why did we contract with a firm to do redistricting for us? And I think Tim brought this point up several months ago, and not maybe utilizing our IPT. Can you help us understand that?
One was, as Cropper had mentioned, his expertise, not only in working with districts of our size, but districts that are larger than us, communities that are very similar to us in the way that they are on the outskirts of a major urban area. He mentioned DeKalb County, that's right on the outskirts of Atlanta. They've seen exponential growth. And so we felt when we went into this project that combining the internal subject matter experts along with an external expert who's got a lot of different experience all the way up, as he mentioned, all the way up to testifying for the Department of Justice in some cases, really strengthened this project for us. And that's really why we went out to have a consultant partner with us.
Thank you. All right, so just wanted to thank the folks who have been involved in the process. I've personally received over 200 letters, emails, messages, and comments. I appreciate, again, the after-school bus ride that helped me to put in perspective a lot of different things. We were able to look at the tablet where future growth will be, and that helped to put perspective on, okay, we have to plan for what's to come and not just what we have now. And I wouldn't have looked at that if I wasn't able to take that bus ride. So I truly appreciate that. As I've stated before, where I'm interested and where my decision will lie is based on what's best for our entire community and not specific pockets within our community. I want to see that we reduce overcrowding and the need for future realignments, and that was another question that I asked boldly of Brian, and I appreciate your responses to that. I want to see the least amount of disruption for our entire community. And then I also was I wanted to see where we maintain diversity or we made that better. Not just diversity for students. I do think that that's really, really important, but diversity in programs that are offered to our students. And I feel like this recommendation allows for that, so I appreciate being able to understand. Lastly, I'll say, we live in Cabarrus County. When I first got here in 1996, there was Carolina Mall and there was a mini Walmart. We have over 3 super Walmarts. We have neighborhood Walmarts. So if you move to Cabarrus County, you kind of got to understand that we are going to change drastically. We are going to continue to get bigger, and we're going to have these tough conversations just because of that. But we live next to Charlotte, so it is what it is. Okay, and that's all I have to say. Thanks. Sorry, y'all.
Thank you. Mr. Walter?
Yeah, I also want to say thank you for the time and the ITP, the work that went into going over these different plans. My first question is going to relate to, when did we put this out to the public? When did they first this is the recommendation?
You're talking about the...
Is that tonight? Is that tonight?
No, it's been out about 13 or 14 days. So it was prior to break. It was the Wednesday of the, was it the 30th? March 30th? Yeah.
So March 3rd, we put a press release. Did we do something? Or did we just stick it on a website? How did we get it out to the public that this is the plan that's going to be presented tonight?
We put it on the CCS realignment site. And then I'm not sure if we did we do other communications with that? I think we put it on the CCS realignment site. We wanted to get out there before school was out for Easter break and people took off. And certainly based on the number of hits on the website, people were aware that it was there.
That's good. I mean, that's my concern, is that the public knows about this plan and that we're possibly voting on it next week. And it's not just a middle school realignment. There's an elementary school realignment and there's a high school realignment that go with this. So I'm just not sure that the public is quite aware that there's more to it than just a middle school. So I just want to get that out there. Secondly, what do I got here? My main concerns were address capacity, making sure there are magnet programs weren't affected significantly, and then not moving people twice, or students twice. And we've addressed the not moving people twice. We think we've done a pretty good job on the capacity. Capacity, can you answer why we did not touch Northwest in this redistricting?
Well, I could touch on it, and then Francis, if you want to add anything to that, what we've analyzed in terms of the growth at Northwest over time, it's been relatively flat. So as we look at that, the student, the number of students per house has a less yield than almost any other area in the county. So it's one of the lowest. So we're just not seeing the growth there yet. We feel like it also sets us up, as we've said a couple of times, for the capital plan. So we know that once Northwest High School moves into their new facility, which will be a larger facility, then we will remodel Northwest Middle School. We'll add 300 seats of capacity there, and we'll be able to address any growth concerns at Northwest Middle School. So it's about the growth that we've seen over time there being relatively flat, combined with the plans for the capital plan and the remodeling, adding 300 seats once the current Northwest High School is remodeled.
So it's just not touching it because right now the growth is flat, and then secondly, we don't want to add to it because there might be growth that we won't.
That's correct.
Okay. Makes sense. Next one had to do with capacity. And again, we're building a new middle school, we got to fill it, and there's going to be a domino effect to that, and it's got to go somewhere. And I can understand that, and I see, obviously, Harris Road has, 116% over capacity, which is 24% more than any other school. So we've got to do something there. And I see how those plans, I guess, have to move enough students. And to me, it almost looks like it's honestly, Odell Middle School now, because you're taking out pretty much all the Cox Mill students out of that district and moving them over to Winkler. Does it move enough, is the question? Is it? Or,
Yeah, it gets us up almost 30% below where we are right now. And I think that, that's the question. That is, we relieved it as much as any middle school that we have in the plan. And, again, looking at the capital plan, there will be some possibilities to, if it's overcrowded at that point, there will be some alignments, realignments that we could look at that point when Northwest is remodeled.
okay. And then going back to the programs, we're moving, which program are we moving away from Harris Road? Or is that, whoever wants to address
The
that?
Mandarin.
So the Mandarin's moving away from that. We're asking students to go to Winkler. That everybody has to do the IP program, or do they have options?
Does everyone have to do the IB program?
Yes. Is it a full school?
So we do have an opt-out option from our middle schools for students who are really not interested in the program, but the students who'd move to Winkler would be automatically enrolled in the IB program there and become a part of that program. The Mandarin program itself is still, the original proposal was to move to the new middle school to create kind of a language academy structure and bring some of our Spanish immersion students together with our Mandarin immersion students. We have a new pipeline of Mandarin immersion students coming up from the Harrisburg Elementary in the next couple of years that we have to accommodate at the middle school. And having one program that brings all of them together gives us some programming options as far as being able to increase the opportunities for those students to have a true cultural identity in a school building. So that component is still in the works.
We got to keep demand, though. Otherwise, you have to have enough students interested to drive all the way across the county now.
Right. And
To going instead of right through backyards.
we're having the discussion about how transportation would be an important component of that potentially for students. We may have to look at hub stops and things for that program, moving those students out of their home community.
Okay. That's all I had on that one. What else do I got here? Lesser impacts on some schools. There are some schools that will be more impacted more. So just keep that in mind. There are, I think FER gets divided into 3 spots instead of just 1, or was something to that effect. You said, or did I just misunderstood that? You said the new middle school goes to 1 high school. Is that correct, or is that?
The new middle school mostly feeds to J. Robinson. There is a portion
okay.
of it that will feed to West Cabarrus
Okay, I
as
just wanted to
well.
make that clear. I didn't, from what I had seen.
Yeah,
that
it was
wasn't
about
the
an 80-20, 75-25
case.
split
So
there.
there's a split,
There
okay.
is, yes.
I had another one about the transportation that was just answered just a little while ago. And last question again has, obviously we've got 1,000 comments. We've had, over 100 letters written directly to us, more than 200 emails. Some of those people still aren't happy. Some of those people still haven't had all their questions answered. Would it have been beneficial to score the Green Plus plan to maybe show them? Because it's, again, all these things here say Green Plus, Green Plus, Green Plus.
Yes, that was requested by a board member, I think it was a week or 2 ago, and that was something that we did do, and we have posted that on the
Okay, so
realignment.
it's on there for folks to see?
Yes, sir, it's on the realignment page, yes, sir, under frequently asked questions.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Ms. Blackwell?
So I just want to say thank you guys very much. I have been nothing but impressed with this whole committee. I've been on it since September. Couldn't listen in on every single meeting just because of other obligations that I have during the day. But I will say that you know, this is certainly not an area of expertise that I have in any way. And Francis, I'm just amazed. Thank you so much, and the times that you've explained things to me, numbers wise, and that kind of information from the very beginning of this. We had so many maps and so many options to go over. It was very overwhelming. And it is pretty amazing that we've been able to get it down to this one particular option. So I just want, if we haven't made it clear to the public tonight, I just want them to understand that this was a long, drawn out, a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of driving and checking out paths and, just making sure as far as, the best feeder patterns for elementary, middle, and high school. There were some things that we happened to have that came across that are good things that wasn't even necessarily the plan, but the way that it worked out is going to be beneficial to the high school and elementary schools as well. So I just thank you guys again for all of the hard work that you put into this, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, for those of us that have been a part of some of these redistricting plans in the past, I think it's the most true statement. This will be one of the hardest things we ever do, next to the pandemic that we've all had to go through this past year. So I think that kind of put it into perspective, but it also presented a lot of more challenges to this process as well. And I think we've all come to figure that one out, that it took just a little bit more time and effort and a couple of different ways to get information and do what we need to do. So I just want to make sure the link to this for the general public is on the website, correct? So is it on the front screen, the home page, as soon as they get it? Is it real easy to navigate?
Yes, ma'am. The realignment page has a button or a section called redistricting recommendation.
Okay.
And that's where the public can see the actual maps, and then there's also a handout they can download on there. And if this presentation isn't posted on there, I will make sure it is there tomorrow under that.
That would be great.
The presentation as well. Yes, ma'am.
That would be great. That would be great. We want them to be able to really be able to easy access. Also, the statement to Mr. Walter's point, I don't think there's a redistricting plan that we've done that didn't touch another grade level. When we did West Cabarrus High School, it touched elementary and middle school. So I'm not so sure how we would be able to do that, and sometimes that works out to our, to the betterment, which it has with this one. We do have the public hearing tomorrow night, so I think that's really good timing the way we did that we've been presented with this plan, and then tomorrow night we can hear from those that have signed up to speak, and that's at 6 o'clock tomorrow night here at the Ed Center. So for those of you that would like to know, we have about 20 people that will be speaking to us, so that you'll get a lot more of information that will either maybe confirm what you're thinking or give you another question or so. And then we will be approving this next Monday night at our business session. So with that being said, is there anything else? Mr. Schultz, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Not at this time. Thank you, everyone that's been involved, and appreciate your attention and your great questions.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cropper. Thank you, Francis. Okay, guys. Next, we are going to move on to the items that we will consider for the consent agenda. Items under number 7.01. We will start with furniture vendor recommendations for the new middle school. We'll have Mr. Tim Louder and or Mr. Brian Cohn.
We'll have Mr.
We'll have
Cohn
Mr.
tonight.
Cohn. Okay,
Yep.
Mr. Cohn.
Mr. Louder is not present, so good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I am here tonight with a recommendation to work with New Idea from Sumter, South Carolina as the furniture, fixture, and equipment vendor for the new Roberta Road Middle School. We have not worked with this company in the past, but the members of the interview panel agreed that this company would suit the needs of the school best. References were checked at several other districts that New Idea has worked with, and they all provided favorable, positive responses to our inquiries. It's also worth noting that the amount of the furniture package requires public bidding. To satisfy that requirement, each of the vendors operate under a cooperative purchasing contract where items have been publicly bid. All the vendors will use the same cooperative purchasing contract. The furniture and equipment budget for Roberta Road is $2,150,000. Not all of that budget will go to the furniture vendor. There will be other items outside of their contract that will have to be purchased with these funds. For example, band instruments, custodial equipment, athletic equipment. So with that, we are asking from this board the recommendation to award New Idea as the furniture vendor for Roberta Road Middle School and use the cooperative purchasing contract to satisfy the bidding requirements. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, and I will just start with Ms. Blackwell. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, help me understand what this cooperative purchasing contract is and how this works in regards to us approving this without seeing actual.
So the cooperative purchasing contract, essentially New Idea will outsource bidding of different vendors that will bid the furniture out. They're kind of the one point of contact. Then they go out and they'll get Wisconsin Bench and different manufacturers that provide all of that stuff to give us the best price.
So it's kind of like having a contractor, like if you're building a house, they go out and.
Solicit bids, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, makes sense to me. Thank you.
Mr. Walter?
You sit on the panel?
I did sit on the panel, yes, sir.
So why this company and not a company that we use for our high school or elementary school?
I'm sorry?
Why this company and not a company that we use for our most recent ones, the high school that we just did?
It is not one of the ones we've used before, no, sir.
So what was the difference?
We just felt like, as the committee looked at all the different interviews that we went through, that they provided the most creative approach to what we felt like the middle school needed.
Okay, I guess
Yeah.
it's kind of a new thing for me to understand as well, to wrap my mind around. But so we were satisfied with the folks that we used for the high school, and we were satisfied.
Oh yeah, we were satisfied, but there are opportunities that we feel like that we needed to look into, and this company, again, they reached out to us a year ago, came and got in front of us virtually, expressed interest in working with us, and their presentation showed that when they gave it to us back in March.
And none of those other companies are local either?
I'm sorry?
Or any of those companies local?
There were a couple of companies, I believe, that were out of the Charlotte area, if I'm not mistaken. But most of these companies are more regionally based. So their home office may be up north, but they have satellite offices, whether it be Florida, Georgia, North Carolina.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Sandage?
Okay, this is probably going to sound crazy, but I asked the same question last week to, I forget it, was it Lauder that called us about the contract? Okay, good. Do we contract for every single thing here? Because I'm always wondering, do we not have someone here that does some of those things in the admin office?
We do not. No, we don't.
Okay.
We don't facilitate or have the ability to provide the level of furnishings that are required for a new school.
It was pretty much the same answer. It would cost us more to get all of the mowing equipment and the staff
Sure,
and all.
yes.
I mean, I get that part of it, but I just wonder, is that truly saving us the most money? So you answer.
Okay.
Before I continue around, Ms. Carpenter, if you don't mind, Brian, would it be
Yes,
fair
ma'am.
to say this is really more like a clearinghouse, the way it's done? And do you get to see, or Tim, does anyone get to see the bids
Yeah, so
yourselves?
what we'll do, we're asking for this board to support the recommendation to work with New Idea, and we'll start that process of the, the kickoff meeting of laying out the furniture. They'll get the number of classrooms, the number of admin rooms, and they'll start pulling all the pieces together that are required for that. And then we start seeing the itemized pricing of how that aligns with what our budget is.
So I guess the question would be, it's evidently within the budget that you normally see, or that would be a red flag.
That's correct.
Number two, you do get to see the individuals that are used, and I'm sure you are familiar with them enough to know where those numbers lie, correct?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
Yes.
really, you're making a decision based on what we've done in the past.
Yes, and a lot of the vendors that came to us expressing interest in bidding, they're buying from the same
Vendors.
vendors.
Right.
It's just a matter of who do we want to be that point person.
Great. Okay. Ms. Carpenter?
And basically, I'm hoping that with this, what we're talking about, we're gonna maybe, hopefully, maybe in the long run, save a little bit.
That's
We hope-
always the goal.
Okay, well, that's what I'm hoping for. Because I would think if we're gonna do this, that that's what the whole objective would be, that we would do that. So,
The objective
okay.
is that they have a budget to meet, and that is their obligation.
Okay, well, that's what I would hope it would be. All right, thank you.
Mr. Furr?
Yes. Yes, as always, I respect your opinion and Mr. Louder's, and if it's good enough for you guys, it's good enough for me.
Thank you, Mr. Furr.
Ms. Adcock?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, board members, are you okay for this to be placed on the consent agenda for next Monday? All good? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Okay, and next we will move on to 7.02, which are the policies for approval on first reading. And before I turn this over to Mr. Schultz, I'm just going to do a quick rundown. And I know that board members, you've had a time and opportunity, or Sue, bear with me. I thought this might expedite this just a little bit. So we are going to be looking at policy number 3115, curriculum and instruction guides, frameworks for instruction, 3200, selection of instructional materials, 3225, 4312, 7320, technology responsible use, 3515, religion in schools, and 4600, student fees, and 7200, professional standards of conduct and performance of teachers. And with that, I'll turn that over to Ms. Burns.
Good evening, Chairperson Grimsley, Mr. Schultz, and members of the board. I would like to present policies for consideration for first read as recommended by the Policy Committee. As you know, with the exception of Policy 4600, Mr. Shaw and his team revised the policies based on board request. And Mr. Shaw, did you want to add anything before we begin?
Sure. Can people hear? The board had expressed an interest in having policies reviewed to the extent they dealt with selection of materials, they dealt with teaching, they dealt with professional activities, and efforts to make sure that everything was going to be presented by teachers and schools in a fair manner without any indoctrination, and just to review that whole process. This is for particularly political and religious activities. So our office reviewed a number of possible policies for revision, maybe 10 or 15, and most of them we determined that they were perfectly fine, or they did not really address the issue and no need to change them. But we did identify about 5 here that we had some recommendations on. And again, the overall purpose was to try to make sure that it's clear to the public and to staff that that the schools are not here to indoctrinate students, they're to teach students and in a fair manner, and not to impose individual viewpoints from either side or any side. It's just to be non-indoctrination. We just wanted to make sure the policies were consistent with that goal.
Yeah, and if I may add to that, this is probably round one of probably about 3 rounds of the review of that policy. We have multiple in the bank still that we're reviewing with the policy committee. We've had 2 policy committees related to these topics with multiple policies, and so we'll have another round of first reads for our next meeting as well.
Board members, did you have any comments or questions for Ms. Burns or Mr. Schultz? Ms. Adcock?
I just had a question on the policy 3115 where we changed approval by appropriate curriculum committee to personnel. So who was the personnel that's now going to approve changes or any modifications?
Mr. Shaw, would you like to answer that?
I don't know who the particular personnel are, but I recall that the discussion was there was no such committee. And so if we didn't have a committee, we should remove the reference to a committee, and then it would be whichever personnel are involved.
And it's the curriculum and instruction personnel, so it'd be Crystal and the directors and the other personnel that are involved in that.
So,
Yeah, and through this process, through this year, there is a C&I committee now that does have parent representation, teacher representation, board member representation on it, as well as the curriculum instruction staff. So it would be that team that would review that and make those recommendations.
Ms. Adcock, are you good?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else, comments or questions? Mr. Walter?
Yeah, if I'd like to pull 4600 and 3225 for action, please.
Okay, I heard 4600 and which other one?
3225.
Okay. Do you have comments or questions?
It's the
Have you
same
submitted?
issue I've had before. The way I interpret some wording in that policy, I think it's too strict. And essentially everybody, there'd be numerous violations if it was the way I read it.
So have you sent anything in as far as a,
This week, no.
okay, will you do that, please?
Sure.
All right, and just copy me on it.
And then 4600 is student fees.
Got it?
I think we ought to leave the list of things that define the fee, so people actually know what it means. Otherwise, it's kind of us determining what that fee is. So I think leaving that in there, and I also think we got to have something in there that says if somebody objects to one of our fees, there ought to be a process for to go through.
Okay, will you formulate an email with those requests and just copy me on it and send it to Ms. Burns and Brian?
Okay.
All right, so those two will be pulled for action. Does anyone else have anything else? Comments or questions on any others? Is everyone okay for the others to be placed on the consent agenda? All the others with the exception of 3225 and 4600. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we will move to 7.03. We will have the budget amendments, and we will have Ms. Kelly Klutz back to the podium.
Good evening, Board. We have some budget amendments for you. We'll start with the state. At the top, you'll see the normal adjustment to our account for our NCVPS. And so at the beginning of the year, they adjust 75%, and then this time of year, they adjust the additional 25%. So that's a normal adjustment that we're expecting. And then toward the bottom of the page, kind of the larger adjustments. So we did receive a coding and mobile application grant from the state. We received our funds for summer reading camps, and then we received a transportation allotment that helps us with our early college. Okay. Let me see if I can get the next page. The second budget amendment is local, and this is an allocation of funds to be able to assist our athletic programs in our schools because of COVID and the inability to receive ticket sales in the normal manner.
Yeah. Now, is that to pay for that, well, it says for the athlete, is that to pay for that ticket spigot thing?
No, ma'am. This is to assist the schools with their easy for me to say, officiating. So the refs and umpires, their security that's required, and then the transportation. So those are things that are required. They're kind of set fees, whether you collect fees for 100 tickets or for 10 tickets, you still have those same costs. They projected their costs to be about 5 times what we're allocating them. So this is just a small supplement to help them in the COVID situation that we have.
Oh, okay, so but it was special COVID money then is what it was?
Yes, ma'am, it's recycled COVID money, yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move on to our federal budget amendments. Most of these are related to sales tax refund, and so the sales tax, once you file that, it goes right back into the account to use for those same purposes. That's what you're seeing there, the federal. And then finally, just small revisions, reclassing funds. The Empower grant is the last year of that. So just cleaning up those accounts, moving things around to be able to close that grant out. And then finally, at the bottom, we did receive our Confucius grant funds for the schools. Any questions on budget amendments?
Board members, any other comments or questions? Hearing none, are we okay to place this on the consent agenda for next week? Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, board members, we have 7.04, which is the board meeting calendar for 2021 through 2022. And I know you've had time to go over that. Did anyone have any conflicts, any questions or comments, or are we good to place this on the consent agenda? All good? Okay, consent it is. Next, we will move to the action agenda, starting with 8.01. This is regarding the lawn services contract. We will have Mr. Chuck Taylor to the podium.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Schultz, board members. I would like to ask for your consideration for approval of the lawn service contracts as attached. If you indulge me, I'd like to give you just a brief overview. It won't take very long, and then if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. So, with an anticipation that we would exceed the $500,000 limit, we're pretty confident on that. We went ahead and presented this as a formal bid according to General Statute 143-129. It was advertised to ensure that minority bidders had a opportunity to see the bid process. We followed all the state, local statutes. We followed the board policies. And we also reviewed it and made sure that we were making moral and ethical decisions on it. One of the things we stipulated that is important for me that you understand is that we required that the bidders receive no more than 3 districts. That's not 3 schools, that's 3 districts. What that means is multiple schools. We have right at 50 schools. There's 46 total facilities with the new schools coming on board. We don't want to, as the old saying goes, put all of our eggs in one basket. That's a dangerous thing in this current time due to manpower, obviously COVID, and even before COVID, that was an issue. So skilled labor at this point in time is something that's difficult for these contractors to deal with, and that's why we limit it. That's my overview for right now, so if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Board members, any comments or questions? Hearing none, we will place this on the action agenda for next Monday night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next we will move on to the 8.02. We will have Ms. Klutz back to the podium for the elementary and secondary school emergency relief, which is known as the ESSER funds.
I should have stayed up here, shouldn't I?
You should have.
All right, board, finally for tonight, we are going to talk about the ESSER funds that we've all heard about for a long time now. So ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 will be what we're discussing today, and so that ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. And so the general purpose of these funds are, you can read that on your own, but the part that's underlined is the part that I want to call your attention to. It's to address the impact of COVID-19, what has and continues to have on our elementary and secondary schools across the nation. So the amount of ESSER funds for Cabarrus County Schools is a little over $42 million. Okay. The allowable uses for ESSER are primarily operating expenses, and so when you think about that, I would say think about Title I funds. So they're very similar to Title I funds, and there is one exception, and that is to improve indoor air quality related to COVID.
Is this a lump sum, or is this broken down over years, or?
That is the sum of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, so it's basically 2 grants, and it is they extend over a 3-year period. So ESSER 2 ends in 2 years, and ESSER 3 ends in the 3rd year. Okay. The actions that I need for the board tonight is we need to be in agreement before we file our application to DPI. We certainly don't want to put something forward to DPI that the board's not in agreement with. LEAs must submit their application, or school systems must submit their application to DPI for approval by May 7th. So you can see there's not a lot of time between opening the application and needing to submit it. And then after that's submitted and the funds are dropped, the board will approve a budget amendment for these funds. So again, today we're just looking for agreement with the plan. Okay. So it makes sense to us that we align our ESSER plan with our budget committee recommendation. We've just spent several months working on our budget recommendation to the board, to the superintendent, and to the commissioners, and it feels like it's the right thing and the best thing to do is to align it with that recommendation. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. So our district needs were defined through that budget committee process. 2 board members assisted with the process. The budget committee worked with many groups, including school level and school improvement teams, teachers and staff, principals and directors, and the cabinet. And we feel like we need to honor the work of that budget committee. Okay. So first off, we'd like to just address educational staff pay as we get into the plan. So this plan will address concerns of competitive pay for our certified staff. This plan will also address concerns that the state did not provide a pay increase for classified staff for the last 2 years, when other state employees did receive 2.5% for 2 years in a row. So according to the last salary study that was conducted for Cabarrus County Schools, our certified supplement was not competitive, although our classified salary was competitive with other school districts. So based on those data points, the recommendation is that we increase our certified supplement from 10% to 12% to more align with more competitive areas around the district, and provide a one-time bonus for our classified folks of 6%. So let's talk a little bit more about historical pay increases for school and state staff. This link that is in green on the PowerPoint presentation is the link to DPI's website where this information is gathered. This information in this link will take you back to 2000 and 2001. And it provides a summary here that teachers since 2000, 2001 to current have received pay compensation increases that accumulate to 86.6%. It also states that state employees have received accumulated pay increases of 40.8%. But I'm going to hold that. There's a note about that one too. It also indicates that the consumer price index is 56.3%. So if you note right off the bat, state employees have not kept up with the consumer price index. So state employees are behind already. Now, this chart shows that you would think that this indicates that teachers have done well, but I'll give you some additional data to ponder a little bit later. So I'm going to take you over to the right side of the chart. I pulled this chart, this data from this link I only went back to 2008, 2009 to current. And you may ask, why is that relevant? So in 2008, 2009 was the start of the recession. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I do. So in 2008, 2009, you can see that state employees received a pay increase, classified school employees received a pay increase, and teachers received a pay increase, all normal, decent pay increases. For 3 years following that recession, no one received a pay increase. So it is likely that we could be entering into a recession in the near future, right? When you issue $42 million to school systems, somebody at some point has to pay for it, right? And so the things are going to change at some point. So the reason I bring this to your attention is that we have an opportunity to award our employees for their hard work and dedication, and we may not have that opportunity in the near future if we don't seize the moment. I also want to call to your attention 2019, 2020, 20 and 21. State employees received a pay increase. Certified teachers received a minimal increase that reflected an experience step, but our classified received no pay increase. So when you look over here on the left at this state employees number that's 40.8%, that is truly for state employees. It is not for school employees. School employees are 5% less than that, so they're only 35%. And the consumer price index is 56%, so well below what it takes to maintain a normal, healthy growth. Okay, so back to talking about pay increases for certified staff. As we said, the recommendation would be to increase our teacher supplement from 10% to 12%. So this increase would require reoccurring funds. So we have partnered with the county for their continued support associated with the competitive supplements over the last 5 years. Reaching state average would be acquired with this request that's increased. The current plan includes the county providing 1% and the Board of Education providing the other percent for a total increase of 2%. It aligns very closely with the way that we've done it over the last couple of years. Once ESSER funds expire, the county partnership would ensure reoccurring funding of this very important item pending commissioners' approval in their current budget. Certified staff are those staff who are paid on the teacher salary schedule, and so there's examples at the bottom of the page. Classroom teacher, as you would expect, EC teacher, speech therapist, positions like that who are paid on the state salary schedule. So more about teacher supplements. Currently, the state average for teacher supplement is $4,942. Cabarrus average is $4,240. Again, with the target and the goal of being the state average. If 10% supplement equals $4,240 for Cabarrus County teachers, then raising that to 12% would be $5,088 for a teacher at 12%, which means we would be slightly above the state average, which was the goal. So the data source is there at the bottom. That's DPI statistical profile. And then the other piece of information, so the chart before indicated that teachers have done fairly well over the last 2 decades. But that's because, and you'll read the bottom, the NEA projected that North Carolina ranked 30th in the nation in teacher pay in 1920 out of the 50 states. But that's because we are up from 2013, we were 47th in the nation. And so we were at the bottom, and so we had to do something, so that 86% has gotten us to 30, position 30. But 30 out of 50 is still not good enough. So while teachers have made some increases, it's not good enough. We have to work harder. The state has to work harder. And we can control the local. We can work harder on the local. So pay increases for classified. So we would like to provide a 1% bonus to our classified staff. The members that I've listed in the middle are staff members who are called classified or in that area. you may ask why a one-time bonus versus a pay increase. And so the pay increase would require reoccurring funding. The primary funding source for classified folks is state funds. And there are no reoccurring state funds for this project. The primary funding source for supplements, teacher supplements, is local. And as I mentioned before, we're working to partner with the county to ensure those reoccurring funds.
Kelly, did you say 1%?
Yes, ma'am. We're going to ask the county commissioners to provide 1%, and the Board of Education would provide the other percent. So that would make us go from 10 to 12%. So it's actually a 2%. The board would do half, and the county commissioners would do half. That's the proposal.
Okay, I thought this one was 6%.
I'm sorry. That's teacher supplements would go from 10 to 12%, so it's 2. This one is 6% because it's one time. Let me dig just a little bit because I think that's helpful. The way the 6% number came is if a teacher gets a 2% increase for 3 years, because ESSER is a 3-year grant, then that's 6%. So that's where the number. So we anticipate, want, and hope that we will be able to continue the teacher percentage forever. And that amount is in their retirement, and anticipate that to be forever. But as far as classified, since this is a 3-year funding cycle, we said, well, if teachers are getting 2%, then the goal will be 6%. So that it would be, they're not the same, but so that there would be somewhat comparable to what a teacher gets and a classified member gets. That was the goal. Okay? Do you have a question? Okay. Okay, I will ask if you have any questions about pay. We have more to go over, but if you have specific questions about pay, I'd like to take them.
Board members, comments or questions? Hearing none.
Okay. All right, and so this document should look very familiar to you. It came straight from our budget presentation, and so again, aligning our budget committee recommendation with our ESSER funds. And so the first item on the budget proposal is to increase teacher supplements. The budget proposal said 11%, but we're recommending 12% now to, again, that 2% to get to average. There is a check mark that it went to budget committee, and that was the recommendation. Over to the right, that's going to cost us $4.6 million of our $42 million over 3 years. The reason that says 3 to 4 years is because the funding actually ends in September, on September 30th. Our fiscal year ends on June, so I have about 2 months in that next year. So that's why it says 3/4. We'll extend it as much as we absolutely can. The next one follows the budget recommendation, increased teacher allotment. There's 37 positions there, and that'll cost $8.8 million. Increase the ESL allotment, 7.5 positions that was recommended to the budget committee. That is $2.4 million. Increase the EC teachers. There's 2 positions recommended, and that's $0.6 million. The SIS positions, there are 10 of those, and that will be $3.4 million over 3 years. The MTSS positions, those are 22 positions for a total of $5.7 million. The next item was increased dean positions. This is not an appropriate use for this type of funds. It's not eligible for ESSER, so we had to skip over that line item. The next item was the 2% increase for salary increase for non-certified. Since we were unable to do that out of a reoccurring funding cycle, we are requesting a 6% one-time bonus for classified, which will cost the district $4.1 million. The next item is the flexed assistant coaching positions. This funding source would not be appropriate for that, but it is a small number, and if the board would like to do that, we just need to let your wishes known, and we'll try to take care of that. The district level MTSS position, it was really either the school level or the district level. We didn't need both. And so since this recommendation has the school level, we have pulled the district level and not funded that. The next one is the professional development coordinator. That position was also in the budget committee recommendation for $0.3 million. Okay, on to the next page was our budget, our break-fix technology positions, 10 of those. Again, a budget committee recommendation, $2.7 million. And then we start getting into some required numbers. So ESSER funds require 20% of the funds to be spent on learning loss. Indirect costs are a required cost too, that's 1.5. Then we're going into our custodial positions, about 6 of those for 1.2 million. A mental health data analyst, an EC mental health clinician, and a secondary academic advisement specialist for 98.5 positions and a $42.4 million request. Well, it's not a request, we have those funds planned for the ESSER funds. Okay. So you might wonder what's going to happen when those funds expire and the funding cliff. So natural attrition. So this district has about 4,000 employees, give or take a few. Normal natural attrition is about 10%. That's a normal rate. We're actually usually pretty good in comparison with attrition. So that means we're going to naturally turn over about 400 positions in this district every single year, whether we want to or not. We also are going to have a natural growth because we grow in this district of about 50 positions a year. So I have about 450 positions that I can absorb or give out and take care of those less than 100 positions. So I can easily take care of those positions when the ESSER funds fall off. So one or the other, it'll be natural attrition or it'll be growth positions, one or the other. What questions do you have for me?
Comments or questions? Board members? Sure.
Kelly, I just wanted to confirm what you said about 20% of those funds have to be used for learning loss.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I hate to complicate it. It's 20% of the ESSER 3, and in that 42 million, I have ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. So that's why, if you did the math, it didn't work out exactly. It's because it's ESSER 3 and not ESSER 2. But yes, ma'am, that's right.
Thank you.
So the only question I have is I just want to make sure we still have to get confirmation from the county commission regarding the supplement match.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then is that part of what we're presenting on Thursday, or is that budget?
ma'am.
It is?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, it is.
So to approve this on Monday night, is that preliminary?
You can do that. This is the plan, and we wouldn't pay teacher supplements till November anyway.
Right.
We never do.
Right.
So you can approve the plan, and if for some reason that doesn't happen, and I feel like the county has partnered with us for the last
Sure.
few years, and there's definitely interest in maintaining that. But if for some reason that wouldn't happen, we do have those dollars allocated for that we could then make a decision to do something different, right? So the
Okay.
board. So I think you can approve this, knowing that wouldn't be, the presentation indicates that commissioner's approval is required for that particular item. So I think you could approve this plan as a plan, right?
Right. I just wanted that clear for the rest of the board.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
they understand that we are doing that presentation Thursday prior to our approval on Monday and prior to their approval as well.
Correct.
Okay, very good. All right, board members, any other comments or questions?
These funds could be also used for maintenance of some sort, or do they not?
It's specific, it's HVAC or things specific to the cleansing of air. I wrote that in here. I was going to read it again. But it's very specific to air quality, indoor air quality is what it says.
So what comes to mind is Beverly Hills. We have a system we're told on that it's on its last legs. If there's no replacement parts, it's going to break. Eventually, we're going to have to pay the whole bill. If these funds can be used towards that, I think sounds like a wonderful opportunity to take care of that issue so we can keep that school open.
So the intent for these funds are operating, and we have very few opportunities to use these or use any funds specifically for operating. And so again, I would align you with the Title I and all of the operating needs. And so while we submit our operating needs to the county every year, we've been submitting the same items over and over and over because they're operating. The county's general statute obligation is to take care of our capital and deferred maintenance needs. They have no general statute obligation to take care of the operating needs, only the utilities and things like that. So I would encourage you, this is the opportunity to satisfy some of our operating needs. Much of this will address the learning loss and the issues that we have all been concerned about as we go forward in the next couple of years. And I would encourage you just to take the advantage and use this for the operating funds in which it was intended.
I understand that position. I also see the position that it's somewhat hard to justify 11 years of salary difference to relate that to COVID, but I mean, I just seen that hard. That seems just different. What does that have to do with COVID relief? I mean, I understand we need to support our teachers, and I don't have an issue with that part, but justifying it by using 10 years of data, I don't know, you submit it to the state approves it or denies it, or I don't know how that works. So if we're asking for the money, we have to detail how we're going to spend that money, right? Somebody who approves that? Who approves the application?
Who approves the application?
Yes.
So DPI approves the application. We're asking you, the board, to approve the plan, and then we will write the application based on the plan.
And they have said salary increases are okay for these funds?
Bonuses are allowed, yes. So for the teacher supplement, I will have to reimburse, I will have to pay custodial or teacher salaries out of that, reimburse that from local, and then pay that locally. So, but absolutely, bonuses are something that many LEAs are doing across the state. And if we don't, we won't be competitive, and it will be very difficult to retain our staff. And we're trying to do it as to let them know that they're valued, that they stuck with us and they did their job, and especially our classified folks were frontline, put their lives, out there on the front line, and we haven't been able to do anything. And so most of the time it's not within our power. We don't have the ability to do that. We don't have the funds, and we don't have the ability, because normally the state makes those decisions. So when the local board has the opportunity to do this, it's always going to be my recommendation that we support our staff and let them know that we appreciate them when we can, and that we want to retain them.
I think we all share that position. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
We all share that, I would believe, everybody on this board. So, thank you.
Okay, board members, any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we will place this on the action agenda for next Monday night at the business meeting. Yes, Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, I thanked Kelly earlier with this when we went through this earlier today, and I so much appreciate her leadership in this area, because what you noticed was she didn't deviate from anything that we've done or recommended from a budget perspective. And I do worry that some districts may do that. I don't have to worry about other districts, but I'm glad that the recommendation, this ESSER recommendation, is 100% in line with our budget committee, our community that put so much time into it, our board members that were on that, and our staff that were on that. Is 100% in line with that. And if we say that those are our priorities in budget committee, then they should be our priorities when we have extra funds to address these COVID issues. So I just appreciate her leadership in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Ms. Grimsley, I have one more request, or one question as related that I'd like the board to consider.
Sure.
So the funds, as I said, the application is due in May 7th, and then it takes DPI a while to process that, and then it may be June before we get the funds. I would love, and as soon as everyone hears this presentation, I'm going to be getting a lot of questions about the bonus, when that's going to happen, and that kind of thing. I would love to be able to pay that in May, the end of May. But what that would require is that me allocating local funds, paying it, and then reimbursing that in June. So I would give you a budget amendment in May, and then we would get our funds and we would reimburse that in June. And then that gives us the opportunity. There's a tax issue. If you're going to do a bonus, you don't want to mess people's taxes up, so you want to wait to the last day of the month to do it, so that'll work better. And then also, we would prefer not to pay it at the end of June because we're closing our books, and that makes things much more difficult. So timing-wise, I would like for the board to consider if I could pay that in May. I would be very much appreciative.
So Kelly, I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Is it just for the classified?
Just for the classified.
Okay.
We'll have, as I said, we'll wait till November to pay the teacher supplement.
Right. So we can just actually modify the motion next Monday night.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
and like I said, I'll bring you a budget amendment in May
Okay.
that'll allow us to go ahead and do that.
Okay. Board members, that'll give you something to think about, and we'll just look at that motion next Monday night. Is that good? Okay. All right. Sounds
you.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, board members, anything else? Okay, I just want to remind the board members and the viewing audience that we do have the public hearing on the new middle school for tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, which is Tuesday, the 13th. And then we do have our business meeting next Monday night, which is the 19th at 6 o'clock. Hearing no other business before us, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Blackwell, a second by Mr. Walter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. And with that, we will say good night to our viewing audience, and we will see you next Monday night. Thank you.